September 15, 1944. The Pacific Ocean looked calm. Gentle waves rolled toward a tiny tropical island surrounded by brilliant blue water. From a distance, Peleliu appeared almost peaceful, a forgotten piece of paradise covered with palm trees, white beaches, and coral cliffs. But beneath that beauty, thousands of Japanese soldiers waited in complete silence, hidden inside caves, buried beneath solid coral, watching, waiting. For months they had transformed this small island into one of the deadliest fortresses ever built in the Pacific. The American Marines approaching the beaches had no idea what was waiting for them. Many believed this battle would be over within 4 days. Instead, it would become one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War. A battle where courage meant almost nothing, because survival itself became nearly impossible. This is the story of Peleliu, a battle that changed military history and raised a question historians still debate today. Was it ever worth fighting? By the summer of 1944, World War II had entered a completely different phase. Across Europe, Allied armies were pushing toward Germany. But thousands of miles away, another war was being fought across endless oceans. The Pacific War. Unlike Europe, victory here could not be achieved by capturing highways or large cities. Every advance required invading another island. Every island had to be conquered from the sea. Every beach became a battlefield. Every hill became a fortress. And every mile forward was paid for in blood. After victories at Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Kwajalein, and Saipan, the United States believed momentum was finally on its side. Japanese forces had suffered enormous losses. Their navy had been crippled. Their air power was fading. Many American commanders believed Japan was running out of time. But they underestimated something far more dangerous than ships or aircraft. Desperation. Japan knew it could no longer defeat America in open naval battles. Instead, it searched for another way. If every island could be turned into a fortress, if every invasion could cost thousands of American lives, perhaps the United States would, though, eventually lose the political will to continue the war. That idea would completely transform Japanese strategy, and Peleliu would become its first major test. Looking at a map, Peleliu hardly seemed important. It was only about 6 miles long, a small coral island located within the Palau archipelago. Few people outside the Pacific had ever heard its name. Yet military planners from both Japan and the United States understood its value. Control of Peleliu meant control of nearby airfields. It offered a strategic position along the route toward the Philippines. General Douglas MacArthur wanted to fulfill the promise he had made 2 years earlier. I shall return. To reach the Philippines safely, American planners believed enemy airfields around Palau had to be neutralized. If Japanese aircraft remained operational there, future invasions could face dangerous attacks. On paper, the operation looked straightforward. Naval bombardment, airstrikes, marine landing. Capture the island, mission complete. Most senior commanders expected victory within days. Some even believed Peleliu would become another stepping stone toward Japan. They could not have been more wrong. The Japanese defenders had studied every previous American landing. They had watched battles from Guadalcanal to Saipan. They noticed a painful pattern. Whenever troops tried defending the beaches directly, American battleships destroyed them before the real fighting even began. Thousands of soldiers had died without ever firing their rifles. Japanese commanders realized those tactics no longer worked, so they abandoned tradition. Instead of stopping Americans in the water, they would let them land. Then, they would destroy them slowly. Every cave became a bunker. Every cliff became a machine gun position. Every tunnel connected another hidden firing point. Artillery disappeared beneath layers of coral rock. Entire units vanished underground. To American reconnaissance aircraft, the island appeared almost empty. Exactly as the Japanese intended, Colonel Kunio Nakagawa understood something many commanders had not. He knew he would probably never receive reinforcements. No rescue fleet would arrive. No powerful navy would break the American blockade. His mission was simple. Hold the island, inflict maximum casualties, make every American pay for every yard of ground. Victory was no longer measured by surviving. It was measured by how many enemies died first. In early September 1944, the Pacific Ocean was no longer empty. From horizon to horizon, it was filled with steel. Battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers. landing ships, supply vessels. It was one of the largest amphibious forces ever assembled in the Pacific theater. More than 30,000 Marines prepared for an assault they had been told would be swift. Many were veterans of brutal island campaigns. Others had never heard a shot fired in combat. For nearly 40% of the 1st Marine Division, Peleliu would be their first battle. Some cleaned their rifles one last time. Others quietly wrote letters home. A few stared at the dark outline of the island, wondering if they would ever see another sunrise. No one spoke much. The closer the fleet came, the quieter everything became. Every Marine knew the same truth. Once the landing craft lowered their ramps, there would be no turning back. American commanders believed they had done everything possible to ensure victory. For days, battleships hammered Peleliu with massive naval guns. Carrier aircraft swept across the island, dropping bombs and firing rockets into suspected defensive positions. Huge clouds of smoke covered the beaches. Explosions echoed through the coral hills. From the decks of American warships, it looked as though nothing could have survived. Reports arriving at headquarters were encouraging. Many officers believed the bombardment had destroyed most Japanese defenses. The operation was expected to move quickly. Some predicted the island would be secured in less than a week. The Marines trusted their leaders. But beneath the shattered landscape, the defenders were still waiting. Hidden inside reinforced caves and concrete bunkers, Japanese soldiers listened as thousands of shells exploded above them. They remained silent. They conserved ammunition. They watched their watches. They were waiting for only one moment. The landing dock. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had transformed Peleliu into something unlike anything the Americans had faced before. Instead of placing soldiers along the shoreline, he positioned them deep inside the island's rugged coral ridges. Hundreds of caves were connected by tunnels. Machine gun nests overlapped each other's fields of fire. Mortars had pre-registered every likely landing route. Artillery pieces could fire through narrow openings before disappearing behind thick steel doors. Snipers occupied hidden positions high in the limestone cliffs. If one bunker fell, another would immediately open fire. Every position supported another. Every cave became part of a giant underground fortress. American intelligence had underestimated both the scale and the sophistication of these defenses. From the air, thick tropical vegetation concealed almost everything. What looked like untouched jungle concealed one of the strongest defensive systems in the Pacific. On the evening before the invasion, darkness settled over the fleet. Lights were kept to a minimum. The ocean was unusually calm. Below deck, Marines checked their equipment again and again. Rifles, ammunition, grenades, medical kits, canteens. Each item might determine whether they lived or died. Some men tried to sleep. Most couldn't. Conversations drifted toward families waiting back home. A few joked to hide their fear. Others sat alone in complete silence. Across the water, Japanese soldiers prepared as well. They fixed bayonets, loaded machine guns, distributed ammunition. Then they disappeared into their caves. No speeches, no celebrations, only quiet determination. Both armies knew the same thing. By tomorrow evening, thousands of men would be dead. Before sunrise, the silence ended. American battleships unleashed another massive bombardment. The sea shook beneath the thunder of heavy naval guns. Columns of smoke climbed into the morning sky. Carrier aircraft screamed overhead, dropping bombs across the island. For nearly 2 hours, fire rained down on Peleliu. From the ships offshore, it appeared impossible that anything remained alive. Then, the shelling stopped. Almost instantly, hundreds of landing, vehicle-tracked, better, known as LVTs, began moving toward the reef. Wave after wave pushed through the calm water. Engines roared. Salt spray covered the Marines. Some gripped their rifles tightly. Others whispered silent prayers. Ahead of them lay narrow beaches with innocent names. White Beach, Orange Beach, simple names, for places that would soon become symbols of unimaginable violence. The island still looked strangely quiet. No gunfire, no movement, no visible enemy. Some Marines wondered if the bombardment really had destroyed the defenders. Then the first landing vehicles crossed the coral reef. And in a single terrifying instant, the silence vanished. From hidden caves and invisible bunkers, Japanese artillery, machine guns, and mortars erupted all at once. The beaches exploded into chaos. Bright tracer rounds ripped across the water. Landing vehicles burst into flames. Men who had survived the journey across the Pacific fell before they even reached the sand. The battle for Peleliu had begun. The first wave had barely reached the shoreline when the full weight of the Japanese defense came crashing down. Machine guns hidden inside coral bunkers opened fire from several directions at once. Mortar shells burst overhead. Artillery rounds slammed into the beaches with terrifying precision. Within minutes, the carefully organized assault dissolved into chaos. Landing vehicles that had survived the reef were now trapped on the narrow beaches. Some burned fiercely after direct hits. Others became twisted piles of steel that blocked the next waves from landing. Marines jumped into waist-deep water, struggling to reach the sand while carrying nearly 80 pounds of equipment. Some never made it. Bullets struck the water around them, sending up endless sprays. Medics rushed toward the wounded only to become targets themselves. The beaches quickly filled with broken equipment, abandoned weapons, and fallen men. For many young Marines, this was their first experience of combat. Nothing in training had prepared them for this. Those who managed to leave the beach discovered the nightmare had only begun. The coconut groves offered almost no protection. Japanese machine gun fire swept every open space. Snipers waited patiently inside concealed firing ports. Whenever a squad believed it had silenced one bunker, another hidden position opened fire from a different angle. The defenders rarely exposed themselves. Instead, they fired through narrow openings carved into the coral cliffs. Seconds later, heavy steel doors closed again. Artillery from deeper inside the island continued to strike the beaches with frightening accuracy. Communication became increasingly difficult. Radio operators were among the first casualties. Without reliable communication, many Marine units fought almost completely on their own. Officers made decisions based only on what they could see. In the confusion, neighboring units often lost contact with one another. Small groups became isolated. Some had no idea where friendly forces were. Yet the advance continued. Stopping meant certain death. Moving forward offered only a small chance of survival. One position caused more destruction than any other. The Marines called it the Point. It was a heavily fortified coral ridge overlooking the landing beaches. From this single position, Japanese machine guns and artillery controlled nearly the entire shoreline. Every reinforcement crossing the beach came under fire. Every supply run became a deadly gamble. American commanders quickly realized that unless the point was captured, the invasion itself might fail. A company of Marines received the mission. They climbed the rocky slopes under constant enemy fire. The terrain was brutal. Sharp coral tore through boots and uniforms. There was almost no cover. Every movement was observed. Flamethrowers blasted cave entrances. Grenades rolled into narrow openings. Explosive charges shattered concrete firing positions. The fighting became incredibly personal. Often the enemy was only a few feet away. After hours of relentless combat, the Marines finally secured most of the point. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Many of the assaulting Marines had been killed or wounded. Those who remained immediately prepared for Japanese counterattacks. By afternoon, the beaches remained under intermittent fire. Fresh waves of Marines continued arriving. Engineers attempted to clear obstacles. Medical teams worked without rest. The wounded lay everywhere. Some called for help, others waited silently. Water quickly became a serious problem. The tropical heat was overwhelming. Temperatures climbed higher as the day progressed. Heavy equipment, thick uniforms, and constant combat exhausted even the strongest Marines. Many collapsed from heat exhaustion before suffering combat wounds. Others discovered that drinking water had been contaminated by fuel during transport, causing sickness and dehydration. Still, no one could stop. Every hour without progress gave the Japanese more time to strengthen their defense. As darkness approached, many Marines hoped the fighting would finally slow. Instead, the Japanese launched their first major counterattack. Supported by light tanks, infantry advanced across the airfield toward the newly established American positions. For a brief moment, it appeared the defenders might actually push the Marines back into the sea. But this time the Americans were ready. Anti-tank guns opened fire. Bazooka teams engaged the advancing armor. Sherman tanks joined the battle. One by one, the Japanese tanks erupted into flames. Without armored support, the infantry attack quickly lost momentum. Machine guns and artillery cut down wave after wave of advancing soldiers. By midnight, the battlefield had fallen strangely quiet once again. But the silence was deceptive. Small groups of Japanese soldiers slipped through the darkness, attempting infiltration attacks. Some reached Marine positions before being discovered. Others hid among the coral ridges, waiting for another opportunity. No one slept peacefully that night. Every shadow looked dangerous. Every sound triggered nervous fingers on rifle triggers. The battle had entered a new phase. The Marines had survived the landing, but they were far from victory. Ahead of them rose a maze of jagged coral mountains. Inside those ridges waited thousands of determined defenders, and the bloodiest fighting of the entire campaign had not even begun. By the third day of the battle, the beaches were finally behind them, but the real nightmare still stood ahead. Towering above, the island was a maze of jagged coral ridges that the Marines would soon call Bloody Nose Ridge. From a distance, the hills looked harmless. Up close, they became a fortress unlike anything the Americans had ever encountered. The sharp coral sliced through boots and uniforms. There was almost no soil to dig foxholes. Every rock could hide a sniper. Every crack in the limestone might conceal a machine gun. The deeper the Marines advanced, the more they realized they were not fighting for an island anymore. They were fighting for every cave, every ridge, every few feet of ground. The Japanese defenders were almost impossible to see. They rarely charged into the open. Instead, they waited patiently inside caves connected by an underground tunnel system. A Marine squad would destroy one bunker,
only to receive fire from another cave just a few yards away.
Some defenders appeared, fired only a handful of rounds, and disappeared before anyone could return fire. Others remained completely silent for hours. The Marines never knew which cave was occupied. Every step forward could trigger another deadly ambush. The battlefield itself had become the enemy. Conventional attacks were failing. Artillery shells often exploded harmlessly against solid coral. Bombs from aircraft shook the mountains, but could not reach the defenders buried deep underground. American commanders changed tactics. Flamethrower teams moved to the front. Combat engineers followed with explosives. Bulldozers pushed forward under enemy fire, sealing cave entrances with tons of rock. Whenever a cave resisted, flames were forced inside. The fire consumed oxygen. Smoke filled every tunnel. Explosives collapsed entire cave systems. Even then, some Japanese soldiers survived and reopened firing positions hours later. Every victory felt temporary. Casualties continued to rise. Entire rifle companies were reduced to only a handful of exhausted men. Experienced officers were killed one after another. Young replacements suddenly found themselves leading squads in battles they barely understood. Medical stations overflowed. Stretcher bearers crossed open ground under constant sniper fire. Sometimes rescuing one wounded Marine cost 2 more lives. The tropical heat became another deadly enemy. Water remained scarce. Sleep became almost impossible. Many Marines had gone days without proper rest. Their faces were burned by the sun. Their uniforms were torn apart by coral rock. Some could barely remember what day it was. Yet every morning they climbed the ridges again. As the days turned into weeks, something inside the men began to change. The constant explosions, the endless gunfire, the sight of fallen friends, all combined into crushing psychological exhaustion. Many Marines later admitted they no longer thought about victory. They thought only about surviving the next hour. Simple sounds, a falling rock, a bird taking flight. Even the wind could trigger panic. Every cave looked alive. Every shadow looked like another hidden rifle. Still, they continued forward because stopping meant giving the defenders time to regroup. There was no escape. Only another hill, another cave, another attack far below. Supply ships continued unloading ammunition, food, and reinforcements. But even fresh troops quickly realized Peleliu was unlike any previous battlefield. The island seemed to consume men without mercy. Japanese resistance never truly collapsed. Every captured position revealed another defensive line farther ahead. American commanders understood a painful truth. The quick victory they had expected was gone. Peleliu had become a battle of endurance, a battle where neither side intended to surrender. The price of victory climbed higher with every passing day. And still, the strongest Japanese positions remained unconquered. Somewhere inside the shattered coral fortress, Colonel Nakagawa continued directing the defense. His men were running low on food and ammunition, but their determination remained unbroken. The final and most desperate phase of the battle was about to begin. Weeks had passed since the first Marines stepped onto the beaches of Peleliu. The quick victory that commanders had predicted was now a distant memory. The battlefield had become a shattered landscape of broken coral, blackened cave entrances, and abandoned equipment, yet the fighting continued. Deep inside the island's rugged hills, the remaining Japanese defenders refused to surrender. Every cave became a fortress. Every tunnel became another obstacle. American troops could no longer rely on rapid assaults. Instead, they advanced slowly, isolating one position after another. Engineers sealed cave entrances with explosives. Flamethrower teams cleared hidden bunkers. Artillery and aircraft supported carefully planned attacks. Progress was measured not in miles, but in yards. The defenders were exhausted. Food was nearly gone. Medical supplies had disappeared. Many soldiers were wounded. Yet discipline remained remarkably strong. Rather than launching reckless attacks, they stayed inside their defensive network, forcing the Americans to fight for every position. On the American side, victory also carried a heavy burden. Combat units had been reduced by casualties. Fresh reinforcements entered a battlefield, already scarred by weeks of relentless fighting. Every newcomer quickly understood why veterans spoke of Peleliu in whispers. Eventually, organized resistance began to collapse. One by one, the remaining strongholds fell. The sound of artillery slowly faded. Smoke drifted above the shattered hills. For the first time in weeks, parts of the island became quiet. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence left behind by devastation. Thousands of lives had been lost. Entire units had been transformed forever. For many survivors, the memories of Peleliu would remain far more difficult to escape than the battlefield itself. Even before the war ended, military leaders debated the battle's value. Supporters argued that capturing Peleliu removed a potential threat and demonstrated the determination of Allied forces. Critics questioned whether the strategic gains justified the enormous casualties. Historians continue to disagree. Some view the battle as an important step in the Pacific campaign. Others believe it became one of the clearest examples of the terrible human cost of island warfare. There may never be a single answer. Today, Peleliu is peaceful. The beaches are quiet. The jungle has reclaimed many of the scars left by war. Yet beneath that peaceful landscape lies a reminder of one of World War II's most brutal campaigns. The Battle of Peleliu teaches us that victory is not always measured by territory captured. Sometimes, the greatest lesson is understanding the true cost of war. Every soldier, regardless of the flag he fought under, was someone's son, brother, husband, or friend. Their stories deserve to be remembered, not because they glorify conflict, but because they remind future generations why peace is so precious.